Welcome, everyone. I'm Talia McMillan with MotiveWorks and delighted to have you all with us for today's webinar, Jumpstart Your IoT Journey with Azure IoT Hub. Before we get started, let me go through a few housekeeping items. Please make sure you're using Google Chrome so you can join in fully. If you have any audio trouble, check your speakers or your headphones. We welcome your questions at any time during today's webinar. Just post your questions using the chat box on your screen. We'll also have dedicated Q&A time after the presentation. Let me take a moment to introduce the company and then I will introduce our speaker. Founded in 2010, MotiveWorks, a Microsoft Gold partner born in cloud with a focus to helping companies drive value through cloud enablement. We have completed over 50 cloud engagements for Fortune 100 and mid-market companies. MotiveWorks provides services for cloud migration and digital transformation using technologies such as IoT and big data analytics. Our presenter today, Nitin, CEO and expert in cloud at MotiveWorks, has a love for cloud. He brings together a rare combination of tremendous technical depth with a strong business acumen. As a respected thought leader in innovation, Nitin advises business leaders on effective integrations of new technologies in their IT strategies. So let's get going. Nitin, I'll pass this over to you.
Thank you, Talia, and thank you everyone for your time today. Thank you for joining this afternoon. It's great to be here. A cloud IoT, one of my favorite topics. So Internet of Things is hot. However, there's a lot of hype, just like any other technology, there's a lot of hype around it. At MotiveWorks, our goal of this webinar series, and we are doing a series of webinars around IoT, and this is the first one. Our goal is to show you why IoT is important and how you, in your company, as a business owner, decision maker, or the IoT leader, or a developer, can get started with your own IoT application. And if you're already doing IoT implementation as part of your company, we hope we can provide you some additional insights or happy to learn from your experiences as part of the discussion. Now, in today's webinar, we will be covering the IoT market, what's hot and what's not so hot in IoT, finding the IoT hotspots of IoT for your business, looking at what use cases will work in your business for the IoT, best candidates, IoT architecture at a high level, looking at what are the key components and a conceptual manner for an end-to-end IoT implementation. And at the end, we will look at how the Azure Cloud Platform by Microsoft provides you solutions and services to get started with their IoT solution. With that, let's talk about IoT market. So it's important to look at what the market is doing, what world is doing. And there are a lot of market surveys and research report that comes out. And if you are not like me and you trust research reports and survey results, I'm just joking. After the last election results, I kind of, my opinion on predicting results for an election or research reports, I'm slightly on the very wary of that. So, but coming to the topic, IoT market is expected to grow to 30 billion devices by 2020 and even more by 2025. So in the next 8 years, the IoT market, just in the number of devices being installed, is gonna be almost 5 times. We are seeing an IoT explosion. In fact, instead of saying Internet of Things, people are saying Internet of Everything and digitizing business information. I want to put this in a perspective, and what you see here on the top axis, the horizontal axis, the list of industries, and what in the left-hand side and the vertical side, you see the different functional areas that an IoT can be a candidate. An IoT implementation may be possible. And then what Forrester has done this smart visual representation of what's hot and what's not. So the red box basically tells you the hottest technology in IoT today, or hottest areas in a specific industry, and blue means probably not a good candidate to do an IoT in that industry for that particular functional area. So what you will see here, looking at companies, industries like financial services and insurance, you really don't see a whole lot of IoT opportunities there to start with. Certainly, insurance companies are uh, trying with wearables and doing things like that. But IoT, from an industrial perspective, from an enterprise perspective, it really has a lot of applications around production, manufacturing, transportation, and logistics. So you will have these slides, and I think it's a good visual to look at what areas um, within your company and industry may be a best candidate for IoT. Let's look at so given that, I want to pose a question, and you can answer in the chat box. That will be helpful. Like, where do you believe you will gain the most immediate value from an IoT solution? So within your company, or even if you're looking at companies across industries, from your experience, from your thoughts, where you think IoT solution can really help and give you the immediate value. It could be around energy efficiency and sustainability. It could be about asset tracking and intelligence and making your operations more effective, making them more profitable and productive. Or it may be around predictive maintenance, risk mitigation, monitoring, those type of things. Or maybe something else. So please take a moment, and we would appreciate if you can share your thoughts in the chat box on the value of IoT that you may see immediate in your industry. Thank you for the people who replied, and I'll while you look at that, I'll move on. I want to talk about what's driving the growth. So we look at how the IoT is expanding, and what I believe is the hardware and manufacturing is really the hardware is the in thing now. It has made the IoT has made hardware cool again. The last 15 years after internet has become more popular, it's mostly about software. Early 2000, we want e-commerce. Everyone wanted a website, and that was a trend. After iPhone came out, iPhone and Android, the mobile devices and mobility, they just ruled all discussions, mobile first. But what is happening with IoT in last couple of years, as IoT become more and more popular and mainstream, it is hardware and manufacturing is and operations is the main thing that people look at from IoT. It's not just a software solution. And what's driving this growth? I call it 3 C's: chips, connectivity, and cloud. Um, excuse me. Chips are getting smaller and smarter. When the RFID chips or the chips that the silicons that are put on different devices and sensors, they're becoming a lot more affordable. You have low power uh, chips, you have low cost silicons, narrowband communication, low throughput chips, and it's much more easier and more affordable to put chip in almost any device. So that's, I think, the number one reason of the growth of IoT. The number two reason is around connectivity. Look at ourselves. I don't think that we can live. We'll certainly survive, but without connectivity, whether you are driving, whether you're on a vacation, whether you are running, you still want to be connected. You just don't want that signal to drop. Wi-Fi signal needs to be there, cellular signal needs to be there. And that's really the connectivity is becoming much more available and broader from everywhere, whether it's manufacturing plant, whether the trucks are moving, whether it's inside the sea, all those places you have connectivity. The last is cloud, and that's my favorite one, and you probably know for obvious reasons. Now, I want to break down cloud into three different factors. First is cloud provides you infinite infrastructure. You almost have infinite capacity available to you without spending a lot of money. And without investing a lot of money and purchasing hardware and software, you can use cloud. Now, related to that, the second part is the best thing is you pay on demand and pay per use. So the risk of getting started with something like IoT or any other solution based on cloud, it lowers the risk and the investment risk because you're not doing a big capex budget. You can just be done in a day, a week, a month, and or maybe a year, but you only pay for what you use, and you can avoid that risk of a big investment. And the last part the, is the startups, the innovation that is happening in non-enterprise companies, non-established companies, the younger companies, and cloud has really made that possible. Without cloud, I don't think you will see as many apps in on App Store. Without cloud, I don't think you will see so many IoT innovations that are happening because our cloud has made it available and accessible for almost anyone. So, uh, and that's one of the reasons a lot of IoT enterprise companies, whether it's Cisco, Microsoft, IBM, EMC, they are investing in startups because they know that's they can move faster and they can do more innovation working through those startups. Moving on, let's talk about IoT business applications in your company. And what you see is most of the common scenarios. Again, I'm not really going to go over each of these scenarios in detail, especially that on the top line, you see that every day, right? I'm sure that in some shape or form you're using the top line. So we all know about it. The the bottom line is more business oriented, it's more enterprise oriented, and it's just a sample of functional scenarios. There may be a lot more applications of IoT. But what I want to do is I want to take a moment to talk about a couple of examples because even though it's very widely known, one of the questions we often hear from customers, especially the mid-size and smaller customers, is I really want to do something about IoT in my company. What do I do? Where should I start using it? And that really is an example question that is specific to your company and your industry. But I'll give an example of how you can think about it. So there is a food distribution company in India, uh, small company, not large operation, 150 food storage locations. And the problem they were having is power cuts in India. And because of the power cuts and because of sometimes the backup power may not work or they run out of gas in that, they were having the ice would melt and ice cream would melt and there may be some health issues that may be caused because of that. So what they did as an IoT application, again, nothing large scale, nothing super innovative, but what they did is a simple. They had temperature sensors as part of the storage, the freezers, and they made it IoT connected. And there's simple applications that if the temperature on these freezers it goes above a threshold, it will send text messages to the local operators. It will send messages to maybe the regional people. If the temperature still continues to rise, it will call the local operators. It will call I think they did something where it will call the CEO if something the temperature continues to rise. Basically, just a simple way of alerting to the local operator that the temperature is going up, you need to do something about the power. Check the backup supply, close the doors, but act on it quickly. And they were able to help. They didn't solve the power cut problem, but they really solved the problem of getting alerted and doing something about it. Let's proactive monitoring and of that. Another example I want to take from a maritime industry, tugboats, barges, ferries. Some of these, you have seen that these of the industries are very low tech. These ferries they run round the clock and they are very thin staffed, mostly 1 or 2% that are operating it. So these companies are really thin spread to gain the efficiency from it. Now companies are using RFID tags, very low power. Um, communication chips, and combined with Wi-Fi coverage and real-time location systems, they are able to provide real-time awareness of their barge or fleet or ferry locations and allowing the barge companies to evaluate transport efficiency and improve operations. So just two examples and a very low tech examples where IoT is really helping and making a difference in the business. So I hope this sparks some thought in your business, in your mind, to look for similar examples that you can use IoT in your business. Now, once you have those ideas, once you have your thoughts, how do you get started with that? I think that's the main topic. And I know there are technical people on the call and who want to talk about, learn about Azure and the architecture. They want to see the diagram. I want to take a few more minutes to talk about the non-technical because it's very important for any company deploying IoT within a company, especially the larger ones, that they understand the non-technical aspect of it. IoT implementation, an end-to-end implementation, and a successful one is a change management. And to be successful in a multi-year journey, it takes a lot of planning. Now, first thing you need to look at is you have to tie together hardware and software. You need to work with people in operations department. You need to work with manufacturing plants. You need to work with hardware people. It's not just like a mobile app or a website or an e-commerce site. You really need to get close to those closely with the hardware team and operations team. And it's not simple. It's not easy. Security. Now, if you are reading the news, the recent news and the WikiLeaks and sure, again, I won't go political here, but security is a big issue. It's a big concern, and every company have to take it seriously. And the reason I want to highlight here, even though we're talking about and getting started, because whatever you do as a POC and pilot, and we all are developers, we know that some of it or most of it really becomes production, and a year goes by and 2 years goes by and you don't change it. So you need to look at it from the start. You have to build in the security. It's not should not be an afterthought. Other I thought that we look at is sometimes and many times company start an IoT project, they do an IoT implementation, they are getting the data, but they are not doing anything with it. One of the company we're working with, Amtrak, it's a good, excellent example, and they are actually using IoT for their tracks. So Amtrak has tracks laid out, railway tracks laid out, and a lot part of the country, and those tracks are used by other railway providers like CSX or NJ Transit or New York Transit. Now, they also charge these companies for the tracks, but it's a flat amount that they charge, irrespective of how much weight are they carrying, how many times are they carrying. They're not looking at that data. Now, they have an IoT hardware implementation where the tracks, they know the temperature of the tracks and the wheel. They know the oscillation that are happening of the wheel when the train passes by, and they also know how much weight is traveling on those tracks. Excuse me. What we are doing with that, so far for the last 2 years, they are not really using that data. They have this data, but they're not doing anything with it. So going back to the point of what to do with your data, you need to understand how are you going to consume it. And in Amtrak example, we are looking at how we can improve the maintenance cycle. It does not have to be a standard cycle that every month you have to go there to those tracks. Whether there are some tracks which require more maintenance because of the weight that has been traveled on that is much higher. And then some tracks, you probably don't need to go there for 2 months or 6 months because they are not really used that much. So all of that data can be captured as it's already been captured, but it's not been used and from an intelligence perspective. Change management. This is around process, people, change management. I'll give you an example of, let's say, smart metering. So currently, if you are a utility supplier, an energy supplier, you have meters installed, And if meter goes wrong, someone lodges a complaint. What do? A guy comes out to your house, and they look at it, they fix it, and they go back. But if once it becomes a smart meter, I would say 9 out of 10 times the guy does not have to go there. While sitting in the main operation office, the energy company can look at your meter records, look at and try to fix the issue. Maybe sometimes the guy have to go there, but you can at least reduce that number of times the guy is going to the meter physically almost half, if not less, if not more. So what you just did, you reduce the job of that person, that person, right? So organization need to look at if those things are happening. How do we manage those people? How do we manage that staff? How do we utilize those skills in somewhere else? And finally, the customer value. We are all technologists, and we got addicted to technology, the latest and the greatest cool thing. But we should not forget, and we should keep a strong eye on what's the customer value are we driving. Okay, so with that, I want to get technical now, and so I hope some of the technical people will like the next part of the discussion as well. Now, an IoT solution, and what we are looking at the picture here is a typical IoT solution architecture. It's a generic and conceptual architecture without any reference to any specific technology. So what language are you using? What platform are you using? Are you using Azure or AWS? We'll talk about that later. But this is in a more of an end-to-end architecture at a higher level. There are three areas that you will need. You need a device connectivity, where your devices will connect to the internet or the cloud. You need data processing and analytics. So when the devices are connected and they start sending data and messages to you, and they can talk to you, how do you process, and what analytics, and what do you do with that? Where do you store that data and things like that? And finally, the presentation is how do you present it to the users? How do you present it to your customers, to the internal people and external people? And let's look at that in a little bit more detail. So in this picture, it's the same version, a conceptual architecture with a little bit more detail. And we will look at each of these sections with Azure specifically, and how these things can get completed by Azure. But at the device connectivity level, you typically may have three types of devices. First is your IP capable devices. So these are the modern devices that are already connected or have the ability to connect to the internet. And a great example is smartwatch, a wearable, that they already manufactured with an IP capable device. Or you may have existing IoT devices, but they are not sending data to the cloud. So they may be sending data like manufacturing plants. There are sensors and there are temperature gauges and meters that send data, but they are not sending into the cloud. So you can connect them to cloud using an IoT client. And then there are low power devices which do not have the actual a lot of processing power, and they connect through the IoT gateway. Now, when these devices are connected, the place that they connect to is something called as cloud gateway. So that's the box that you will see, and that's where the device connectivity area kind of covers. Once the devices are connected, the data processing, analytics, and management of the devices is the second area, which includes the identity and security and registry of each of those devices, like what the device ID is, what is the serial number, where it is located, what is the location, what plant, what company, what customer, metadata around it. Then the provisioning API, when new device gets added, when devices are taken offline, how does that happen? The metadata gets stored in something called as device state store. So these three boxes that you see is around device management. The next thing is, once the device is connected and it is secure and it is identified, they will start sending data and messages. They may send data every second, every 5 minutes, every hour, depending on whatever your use case is. And and that data is being processed by something called as stream processors. So it's again a generic conceptual term of continuous stream of data coming to you, and stream processors handles that. So another example of data stream is, let's say, Twitter stream. If you are watching an NFL game or Super Bowl and people are doing tweets, all those tweets, like 100 tweets a second, 1,000 tweets a second coming, it's nothing but it's a stream of data. Similarly, IoT sends you data at a different frequency. Um, all this data that is are sent, and additionally the device data, the security data, it's stored in the storage. Um, Once the data is being captured through the stream, you need the backend logic. So that you need some analytics on it, you need some processing of that, you need to write some rules around it, and that's where app backend in the top corner comes in. And then as you are collecting more and more data, you can write analytics on it, you can do machine learning on that, and you can do predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics. All of that comes here. And at at the tail end of it, not really implementation, but on the boxes, it's about presentation and the business connectivity. Because first of all, you may need to create some charts and graphs and some user interfaces to interact with that data, to consume that data, to present it to the users through mobile apps, through web apps. Or you may want to send it to your ERP system, you may want to send it to your asset management system, you may want to send it to your Salesforce or CRM system. And that's where the presentation and business connectivity thing comes in. Now, let's take a deeper dive now on how these components are realized and implemented by Azure. What does Azure gives you? Because that's the beauty of cloud, that the implementation time to get started is pretty much in minutes. It's not days, it's not hours, it's not. You can get started with this architecture in minutes. Now, how does that happen? So first thing, Azure provides you Azure IoT Hub. This is really the center of IoT uh, offering by Azure. As you may know, Azure provides a lot of services around storage, database, web applications, hosting. Azure IoT Hub, Azure IoT Suite is the key part where you see the technical, the core IoT functionality provided by Azure. It gives you the connectivity options. It gives you device registration APIs and device management APIs and security and everything. You can also use event hubs. So event hubs basically handles capturing of the events and an event-driven architecture where a registration event, a deregistration event, a message received event is captured by Azure IoT or Azure Event Hub. And again, the difference is these event hubs are designed to handle huge volume of scale. We are talking about tens and thousands of messages, millions of messages that these event hubs can handle every minute, every second. So the next part after that comes is device registration, device metadata, and identity and security information. Now, Azure IoT Hub, as I said, it provides you the functionality of device identity and device management. And then it gives you options to store that data for a data storage of your choice. One option is MongoDB, which is really a NoSQL offering from Azure. Not from Azure, sorry. It's not from Microsoft. It's an open source database. We like it. Um, and but you can use a SQL database in Azure. You can store the CSV files in a blob storage. There are many ways that you can store that data about the devices. Next is your provisioning API. So your API of registering a device, deregistration of device, firmware updates, the telemetry of the device that comes, all of that can be hosted in API apps, and then logic apps really allows you to orchestrate a process around it. And these are all called as platform as a service. So you really don't have to install anything. And what you are doing with these things are you are consuming all of these things through browser or through an IDE like Visual Studio or something like that, which will give you these ready applications and template to start your IoT project with that. Similarly, the device state store. So I just want to highlight the difference between the state data and the operational data. So when a device is connected, let's take a temperature sensor that is sending data to you. The sensor ID, the device ID that it is connected to, um, the serial number, the model number, the location of that, which customer it belongs to, all of that is a state store. But the actual temperature readings that it is sending you on a frequent intervals, that is an operational data. So the state store is managed by IoT Hub, and the operational data comes to you as messages, and that is handled by stream processors. So stream processor, there's a technology in Azure called Stream Analytics. So Stream Analytics is Azure implementation of implementing continuous data stream, and this is the one that can handle also thousands and hundreds and thousands of messages per second per minute, and really help you create a scalable application. Because again, we are talking about in a large industrial implementation, you may have hundreds and thousands of devices connecting through your IoT hub and sending data. So you really need a scalable system to be able to handle that amount of load. Or you can use, if you are an open source shop, if you have people who worked in open source, excuse me, you can use Apache Storm with HD Insight. So Azure provides Hadoop, and it's called as HD Insight. And you can use Apache Storm along with HD Insight. Or you can just install Apache Storm on virtual machines and get started with the Apache Storm and for all streaming data. After that, how do you act on the data? What do you do with the data, business processes, and the logic around that? So, one of the other hot technology today, which we may talk about that and soon, a webinar around microservices. It's one of the other hype and hottest technology right now. It's not really a technology; it's more of an architecture paradigm. It's called microservices. Some of you may be familiar with that. So, coming back to this, Azure Service Fabric or Service Fabric really is the implementation of microservices architecture by Azure, by Microsoft. So it gives you native capability to create microservices-based application using Azure Service Fabric. You can use Azure Functions, and you can use Azure Virtual Machines. So Azure Functions are basically serverless compute. You don't need to have a VM, you don't need to have a web server, you don't need to have a batch process. You just write code and you deploy it as Azure Functions, and it gets involved by events. So it's pretty cool. Amazon has a similar offering called AWS Lambda. So Power BI is the reporting and charting and pretty cool reports and chart that it can create for you, and it has a direct implementation and connector with Stream Analytics. So you can really start sending data to your devices. You don't need Service Fabric, Azure Functions, anything. You can just connect that with Power BI, and you will see a real-time dashboard showing you changing data, changing graphs, changing numbers, um, real time using Stream Analytics, using the direct connection with Stream Analytics. And it's not complex at all. I mean, you can pretty much do all of that in a day. Or you can write custom applications, custom UI, Azure App Service with API apps. I want to run fast, move a little bit quickly. I think we are getting closer to the time. You can use Azure Logic Apps for all the integration with the backend integration. You can use Azure Data Factory and BizTalk and API apps. Uh, Now, when it comes to machine learning and analytics and advanced analytics on it, either you can use machine learning, uh, a machine learning studio by Azure. It's a platform as a service, and you can do a lot of machine learning algorithms, and you can do some really cool predictive analytics, pretty much for free. If you are getting started, you're kicking tires and doing a POC and demo, I'm pretty sure you will be well within the free tier of Azure, and you can do machine learning. You probably need data scientists and some of that skills, but from the technology side, it's a pretty easy way to get started. All you need is a browser. Apache Spark is the open source version, and Apache Spark gives you a lot of capability and Spark ML, or you can use Power BI. And lastly, storage. Azure has different storage options and blob storage. Every data, it can be stored in blob storage, table storage, and different other options. Now, I'm going to run this through quickly. This is a slightly non-technical part, how to get started. As I said, IoT is a multi-year journey, but it doesn't have to be a multi-year initiative to start with. You can start with a small step. Do a proof of concept. Pick a simple use case. If you have a logistics company, just take one truck and connect it with a device. Connect it with a 4G chip and start sending data. So start very small. Define what you are looking to get out of that. How do you really justify and value that you want to create out of that IoT solution? And start. Another way to get started is Azure IoT pre-configured solutions. Now, and this is some of the specific takeaways I feel that you can have. You can get started by using this a starter kit. It's an Azure certified starter kit. Out of the box, it connects directly to the IoT Hub once you have the Wi-Fi connectivity. It's $40. It's really nothing. Probably less than a dinner, and you can create an IoT application with this. It has a photoresistor to sense light, so it has sensors that it gives you with that. It has humidity and temperature sensors. So if you want to build an application, if a use case for a temperature sensor, you can pretty much get started with this kit. And it comes with videos and instructions on how to program it, how to connect it with the Wi-Fi and things like that. And you can get started with this quickly. If you have a more complex implementation, you have a manufacturing plan, a water heater or something, an industrial application, there's another option. There are hundreds of options actually. I just listed two of these. And this is again not much, $600 to get started with an IoT implementation with a device. Excuse me. So it gives you all the different connectivity options to connect your hardware device, and it has an input module, an analog input module, and also a cellular antenna. So this connects through the 3G or 4G gateway, and it does not require any specific Wi-Fi connectivity. Now, what you see here is a reference implementation by Azure. So you can literally go to the Azure website, create your account if you don't already have one. And Azure gives you different pre-configured solution. So it's kind of a reference implementation where it creates the code, it creates the services for you. Let's say this example is remote monitoring. I'm going to switch to the next slide. So this is what you get out of the box using that similar pre-configured solution. So you get map, you get graphs, you get some charts, and all of this, you don't have to write any code to get started with that. So it gives you all the code that you can further customize, you can make it custom, you can add your attributes, you can change the UI. But to get started, you can use that reference implementation for remote monitoring. They also have reference implementation for predictive analytics, a few more. And partners like Motiveworks and then Microsoft and other partners, they're also adding industry-specific solutions to get started with your IoT solution. So this kind of brings me to the end of what I wanted to cover, and I think we are right on time. I may be a few minutes over. I wanted to leave a good amount of time for the question and answers. And before I turn it over to Thoya, I just wanted to share this with you. We have an offering. Motiveworks, as you know, we have a cloud solutions company. We are a Microsoft Gold partner, and we have an Internet of Things prototype offering. It's a POC, proof of concept type of package for you to kick tires. That's what they said, to test waters of how you can get started with IoT. If you want to do a small project and do certain implementation and try uh, a use case within your company. With that, I will turn it over to Thoya. Please feel free to ask questions. We have almost 15 more minutes remaining. Again, thank you everyone for joining and listening in. I hope the session was useful for you, and please share your questions.
Thank you, Nitin. Please use the chat box to ask any questions or share any comments. One of the questions that we received is, what changes do I need to make to my current hardware?
So, as I was talking about the IoT connectivity, and I'll go back to the diagram again. Um, there are three type of typical scenarios that you will see um, in the connectivity. I'm sorry, yep. So if you already, when you are asking what changes you need to make for your hardware, I'm assuming it's not an IP capable device already. So if it's a kind of a RFID device, it's a low power device, narrow band communication device, then you may need to look at finding something that is can be connected through the Wi-Fi or can be connected through the 4G network. There is something called as Azure IoT Client SDK. So you can create some custom device, an Arduino and Raspberry Pi or Adafruit. These are some that kits that are available for 20, 30, $40, which gives you capability to connect with your existing hardware and device. So you're not making changes to your existing hardware or device. Using these modules and using this starter kits, you're basically attaching it, which gives you the internet connectivity. I hope that answers your question.
Our next question is, how do you handle security?
So security is basically handled at the device level. I think that's the most important part that I think. It has to be handled at the data transmission level, at data storage level. But one of the main thing that we need to look at is keeping your device secure. In a few months back or last year, we have this whole internet went down, and the reason went down because some Wi-Fi modems, they had the default administrator password set up, and it was a very simple one to guess, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of modems were hacked because of that default password. So you need to make sure that the hardware and devices that you're connecting, they are secure, and that's where Azure IoT Hub provides you that device identity and registry information and APIs to secure your devices. And definitely after that, you should secure your transmission, you should secure your data storage, which is in cloud. So
during your experience, how long does it We just got a question in. How much of my home network and home security and lighting is running on Wi-Fi? What would be the advantage of moving those to IoT?
So your home network and home security and lighting, it's a consumer example of that. So it basically goes into the home automation. I'll give you an example of a garage door, and I have a garage door opener which has the capability to connect through my Wi-Fi. And once it is connected to the Wi-Fi, I can download this company's app and look at the status of. And a few times that has happened, like in the night, our garage door was open, and we didn't realize that. Thanks to God that nothing happened. No one came in, but using once the garage door is connected to the IoT or to the Wi-Fi mainly, um, I can now set up alerts on my app to send me a text message or to show me a notification when the garage door is open after 10 p.m. It's a real example that I'm giving. So when you are saying connecting your lighting to the Wi-Fi, to me that's more of a convenience. To you, you can turn on your lights on and off from here. I mean, there are bulbs coming from Philips and many other companies from GE, which are now Wi-Fi enabled bulbs and lighting. I don't have those. I think they are costly right now. I mean, if they come down in price, it's just a coolness factor to me. Um, there's a Suddenly there is some utility that if I have to turn off lights when I'm sitting here in office to save some energy, yeah, that's a value. But I mean, it's a case by case basis. Similarly, your home security. I have a home security system at home which is connected to the Wi-Fi. And if you look at the traditional security system at home, like ADT and all, by default, they connect through the command center. The ADT has this people sitting on the phone looking at your alerts and monitoring, and then they call the police, they call you. Um, but in this scenario, home security, I don't need that service. All I need is the sensors. They are connected to the Wi-Fi using a hub that they gave me, and an app. So if I don't use the monitoring service, I can still use those functionality. Instead of alerting the central command center, it will alert me on a phone. It will give me a push notification um, that someone opened my door, or the water is running in the basement because there is a water sensor or humidity sensor. So I mean that's a benefit of you connecting your home security to Wi-Fi. It's more of a convenience and remote. It's kind of an automation and remote management, and remote automation type of scenario. If I take this same example to industrial level, I hope that answers your question. I see some questions that is a presentation available after the call. Yes, we will, as part of the follow-up, you will have the webinar recording that you will be available, and also the presentation in a PDF format that will be available to you as well.
Thank you, Nitin, for today's presentations, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your questions and this opportunity to interact with you. We'd gladly connect with any of you who would like to continue the conversation offline. We also welcome your feedback for today's webinar so we can improve our efforts for you next time. Please check your inbox for a brief email that will be sent to you momentarily.